Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through a low stone doorway in the most famous city the ancient world ever buried alive, into a room roughly the size of your bathroom that smells like olive oil smoke, cheap Syrian perfume, and something you're going to politely decide not to identify. Where the walls are covered in handwritten reviews that would get someone permanently banned from every major platform, where the bed is a raised slab of stone with a mattress that has absorbed approximately 50 years of human experience, and where a woman named Lydia, Greek-named, sharp-eyed, and currently mentally calculating her remaining lamp oil, has been sitting in this exact room since before most of Pompeii had its breakfast. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire ran a legal, taxed, bureaucratically registered sex industry in cities across the ancient world, and in Pompeii, in the cheerful shadow of a mountain that nobody had gotten around to worrying about yet. The Lupanar was open for business every day, including public holidays. Tonight, we are going in. Bring something to read on the walls. There is, as it turns out, a great deal to read on the walls. Before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me, what would your occupation have been in ancient Rome? Garum salesman? Toga repair specialist? The magistrate who had to process sex worker registration forms with a straight face? Be honest with yourself. The census doesn't judge. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that gentle white noise, and get comfortable. Somewhere in ancient Pompeii right now, a tiny terracotta lamp is burning low on olive oil. A ginger cat named Sulphur is walking across someone's very important correspondence without a word of apology, and a city of 11,000 people is settling in for the night, mostly unaware that the volcano they've been calling a mountain has been making some rather unusual sounds. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it actually smelled like inside a Roman lupanar? And whether the answer is a navigable blend of lamp smoke, cheap wine, and ambition, or something considerably more specific? Have you ever wondered how you paid for services in a world with no apps, no cards, and where the coins in your pocket had the emperor's face stamped on them, which gave the whole transaction a vaguely treasonous quality? Have you ever wondered what it looked like when you walked up to a Roman magistrate's office to formally register as a sex worker? Whether there was a queue, whether the bureaucrat had developed a neutral face for the occasion, whether the forms were filed under a specific drawer? Have you ever wondered what the graffiti on the walls of the Pompeii Lupanar actually said across 2,000 years and 6 meters of volcanic ash, and whether any of it at all, turned out to be surprisingly tender? Have you ever wondered what the stone beds felt like, and whether the mattresses were, on balance, better or worse than a moderately bad hostel? Have you ever wondered how a Roman brothel keeper filed his taxes, and what expression the collector wore when he knocked on the door? And have you ever wondered where the cat went when things got too busy? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 78 AD in the city of Pompeii, in a stone room no wider than a generous parking space, smelling of lamp oil and the kind of perfume that announces itself 3 rooms before you arrive. The walls around you are dark with soot near the ceiling and covered at eye level in a dense, confident layer of Latin graffiti, names, prices, opinions, drawings, and at least one fairly detailed complaint about a man named Caius that you suspect is not entirely professional in nature. Outside the wooden door, which does not quite reach the floor and therefore provides the acoustic privacy of a curtain made from good intentions, the city of Pompeii is already conducting its business at full volume. Carts grinding over basalt pavement, a vendor yelling something about fish sauce, and a rooster who has spectacularly misjudged the hour. The lamp on the shelf above you is burning steadily. You have, by rough estimate, 3 hours of oil left. And in the room next to you, through a wall thin enough that you can hear everything, someone is already awake. This is the Lupanar. And this is going to be a long, informative, occasionally alarming, and ultimately rather human night. Let's set the scene. The Lupanar of Pompeii, the one archaeologists uncovered in 1862, the one that survives in remarkable condition today, the one that remains one of the most visited sites in the entire excavation, and possibly the most awkward field trip destination in the history of secondary school education, sits at the corner of 2 narrow lanes in the residential heart of the city. The building is not large. From the outside, standing in the lane in your sandals, you might mistake it for a slightly ambitious storage facility. The doorway is low. You have to dip your head, and the threshold is worn smooth by, conservatively, several million footsteps. The stone of the doorstep is polished the way only decades of traffic polishes stone, until it looks almost soft. It is, to use the technical architectural term, unassuming. This is deliberate. You step through into a short corridor, and the first thing that hits you is the lamp smoke, that particular smell of burning olive oil that ancient cities marinated in, somewhere between a candle and a kitchen, warm and slightly greasy, and just faintly acrid at the back of the throat. There are 5 rooms on the ground floor, arranged along either side of the corridor, each one behind a door that is partly open, a stone curtain rod above the frame, where a heavy cloth can be hung when privacy is more important than ventilation. Each room is approximately the size of a modern walk-in closet, and not a generous walk-in closet, more the kind where you have to turn sideways to find your shoes. Inside each room, against the far wall, is a raised stone platform, a masonry bed, built into the wall like a shelf, permanent and slightly theatrical, like a very small stage for exactly one activity. In the nicer establishments, there would be a real mattress, wool-stuffed, perhaps, or packed with dried seagrass, the kind of thing that starts reasonably well and declines sharply over the years, like a very short-lived hotel. In the Lupanar, the mattresses are present, though calling them mattresses is a kindness the Latin language itself would hesitate to offer. They are functional. They have seen use. They are the world's worst Airbnb in the world's smallest studio. And the review section, had it existed, would have been complicated. Above each doorway, there is a painting. These are the famous frescoes of the Lupanar, small, competent, matter-of-fact depictions of various positions and activities painted directly onto the plaster in reasonably good paint that survived 2,000 years of ash and tourist breath. Whether these were menus or decorations or simply the Roman equivalent of a very specific piece of wall art, historians have debated for a century and a half. What is not in debate is that they are there, They are explicit, and the expression on the figures in them is one of universal mild concentration, like people trying to remember if they left the stove on. The walls themselves, below the frescoes, and all the way down to the floor, are the real art. They are covered, not dotted, not scrawled here and there, but layered and dense and rich, in graffiti, written by everyone: clients, workers, passers-by, soldiers, slaves, freedmen, merchants, written in Latin, in Greek, in Oscan, written carefully, written sloppily, written drunk, written with metal styluses, with charcoal, with whatever was at hand. The graffiti of the Lupanar is a 2,000-year-old comment section, and like all comment sections, it is instructive, alarming, frequently funny, and occasionally, unexpectedly, moving. You stand in the corridor and take it all in. The low light, the soot-stained ceiling, the sound of the city outside, the sound of the room next to you settling into its work. And you think, this is smaller than I imagined. History always is. And yet, in this narrow building with its narrow rooms and its stone beds and its lamp oil and its walls full of human voices, thousands of lives were lived with all the weight and color and ordinary mundanity that any life contains. Welcome to the Lupanar. Mind the threshold on your way in. Let's talk about the city. You cannot understand the Lupanar without understanding Pompeii. And you cannot understand Pompeii without standing in the middle of it, which, admittedly, requires either a time machine or a very specific vacation. But bear with me. Pompeii in 78. AD is a city in full, unstoppable, slightly chaotic operation. It has somewhere between 11,000 and 20,000 people, depending on whose estimate you trust. It has a forum, a basilica, 2 theaters, a large amphitheater that holds 20,000 spectators, at least 3 major public bath complexes, and more than 30 thermopolia. Roman fast food counters built into the sides of buildings, with circular holes in the stone countertop, where ceramic pots of hot food sit like the world's most ancient and confident buffet. The streets of Pompeii are narrow, unnervingly narrow for a city of this size, and made of large, irregular basalt blocks worn into shallow channels by cartwheels. The carts themselves are not allowed in the city during daylight hours, so from dawn until dusk, the streets belong to pedestrians and donkeys, and from dusk until dawn, they belong to the carts, which grind and clatter on the stone with the subtlety of a small earthquake every night, reliably, from approximately the hour you've just fallen asleep. This is not a design flaw. This is Pompeii. The smell of Pompeii, and this is something the guidebooks tend to leave out, is a layered, complex, and entirely genuine assault. There's the smell of bread baking, because there are more than 30 bakeries, and they are working constantly. There's the smell of garum, the fermented fish sauce that the Romans put on everything, the Worcestershire sauce of the ancient world, the condiment that would clear a modern room but that 2,000 years ago was considered a mild flavoring, like ketchup, wafting from cooking pots and storage jars and the clothing of anyone who handled it for any length of time, which is most people. There's the smell of the tanneries and the pholoniki, the laundries, which used human urine to clean togas, and which therefore smelled exactly like you think a building full of fermenting urine smells like. There's the smell of the animals, horses, donkeys, mules, pigs, that share the streets with approximately equal confidence. And there is, underneath all of this, the smell of the sea, not far away, salt and iodine on a warm Mediterranean breeze that occasionally cuts through everything else, and reminds you that this is, in fact, a beautiful location for a city. The Lupanar sits in the middle of this, near the center of town, about 2 blocks from the Forum, which tells you something about Roman urban planning priorities. It is not hidden. It is not in a back alley on the edge of town. It is, by the standards of the neighborhood, just a building. Its neighbors include a bakery, a tavern, and several private homes whose residents have presumably made their peace with the location. In a city where the penis symbol appears on walls, sidewalks, and shop fronts as a common good luck charm, like the ancient equivalent of a 4-leaf clover, except considerably more specific. The Lupanar is unremarkable. Just another building doing business. And in a city where there was a Lupanar on every corner and a thermopolium on every other one, the Lupanar of Pompeii is simply the one that happened to be made of stone, solid enough to survive a catastrophic volcanic eruption, 6 meters of pyroclastic material, and 1,000 years of being buried, which is either an argument for good Roman construction techniques or a very specific form of historical irony. Possibly both. The city hums around you. Someone is arguing in the thermopolium next door. Somewhere above the roof lines, the mountain sits calm and enormous and utterly uninterested in what you're doing tonight. You pull your toga a little tighter and step further into the lane. And honestly, you've been in worse places. Let's talk about Faustus. Every institution needs a person to run it, and the Lupanar has Faustus. You will meet Faustus, the leno, the brothel keeper, within your first hour in the building, because Faustus has a talent for appearing in doorways at moments that maximize his authority, like a middle manager whose office happens to have excellent sight lines to the rest of the floor. Faustus is not a large man, but he conducts himself as though he is, chin elevated, toga arranged with a precision that suggests someone spent 10 minutes on it this morning, a ledger under his arm at all times like a headmaster who has given up on subtlety and simply carries the evidence of your failures openly. The word leno in Latin does a lot of work. It means brothel keeper, but it is also a general-purpose insult, used the way you might use profiteer, or in a less charitable moment, a few other words. And the Romans had very complicated feelings about the men and women who ran these establishments. On one hand, the sex trade was legal, taxed, and tolerated as a necessary part of urban life. On the other hand, the leno was at the very bottom of the social pile, legally classified as infames, a technical term meaning that you had no right to bring a case in a Roman court, could not vote, could not hold public office, and were, as far as the law was concerned, a person of such negligible social standing that the entire civic machinery of Rome had agreed, by consensus, to pretend you were barely there. This is the central irony of the leno's position. He runs an enterprise the government has officially permitted, actively taxes, and quietly relies upon. And in return, the government treats him with the kind of public disdain usually reserved for people who have committed actual crimes. He pays his taxes and receives, in return, official contempt. This is either a remarkably modern situation or a deeply ancient one. The evidence suggests both. Faustus, to his credit, has adapted. He is aggressively unbothered. He keeps his accounts with meticulous care, maintains a running tally of which rooms are occupied and for how long, and has developed the particular skill of all middle managers of questionable enterprises everywhere, the ability to speak to absolutely anyone. Senator, soldier, freedman, slave, with the exact same blend of professional warmth and total personal detachment, like a very experienced hotel concierge who has simply stopped wondering what the guests are doing upstairs. He has been running the Lupanar for 11 years. He took it over from his predecessor, a woman named Gaia, who retired under circumstances Faustus declines to discuss, but which, based on available evidence, involved a disagreement with the local aedile and a quantity of improperly declared income. Gaia, by all accounts, was considerably more frightening than Faustus. Several of the longer-serving workers remember her with a kind of fond terror, the way you remember a very strict teacher you grew to appreciate only decades later. Faustus's ledger contains, in his own cramped handwriting, the name of each worker, their daily rate, any expenses they've incurred in oil, perfume, linens, medical attention, and a running note of what they owe him for room and board. Because in the Lupanar, as in most establishments of this kind in the Roman world, the workers do not simply work for free and go home. Many of them are enslaved, their earnings going entirely to Faustus or to the person who has placed them here under contract. Others are technically free but indebted. Their accommodation, their food, their clothing, all counted against future earnings in a system of perpetual deficit that a modern labor lawyer would have some very vigorous opinions about. Every morning, Faustus reviews the ledger. Every morning, Faustus notes the balance. Every morning, somewhere in the calculation, the numbers work in Faustus's favor. This is not an accident. This is accounting. And yet, and here is where Faustus becomes interesting rather than simply villainous, Faustus is not entirely heartless. He knows, with the cold pragmatism of a man who has run an establishment for 11 years, that a worker who is ill is a worker who is not earning, and a worker who has run away is a worker he has to replace. A degree of basic maintenance, therefore, is not generosity. It is operational efficiency. Faustus provides food. He provides lamp oil. He provides, in cases of genuine need, a physician of moderate competence. He does not do this because he is kind. He does it because the ledger makes it the rational choice. Whether the people in the rooms behind him appreciate the distinction is another matter entirely. Let's talk about the law. Before you can understand what it meant to work in or patronize a Roman Lupanar, you need to understand what Rome's legal relationship with the sex trade actually was. And once you do, you will either be impressed by the bureaucratic thoroughness of the Roman state or quietly horrified by it, possibly simultaneously. Sex work in the Roman world was legal, not tolerated, not winked at, not permitted with a resigned shrug. Legal, explicitly, formally, officially legal. The Roman government had thought about this problem in the way the Roman government thought about all problems, which is to say, with the specific energy of a civilization that liked to categorize things, write them down, and then tax them. And so, they had categorized, written down, and taxed it. The vectigal meretricium, the prostitution tax, was formally codified under the Emperor Caligula in the 1st century, though the practice of taxing sex work predated him considerably. The tax was simple in concept and slightly surreal in execution. Every registered sex worker paid, daily, an amount equal to the price of one client encounter. The tax was collected by the edils, the local magistrates responsible for public order, market regulation, and apparently, this. The edils sent collectors around to each establishment daily, and the whole operation ran with the same cheerful clockwork inevitability as a municipal parking fine scheme, except that the collectors presumably developed a more specialized professional face. But before you could be taxed, you had to be registered. And registration, this is the part that would make any modern HR department's eye twitch, involved going to the local magistrate's office and formally declaring yourself a sex worker. You gave your name. You gave your place of origin. You gave your price. All of this was written down in an official register, and you were assigned, effectively, a professional category from which you could not, this is the crucial detail, ever be removed. Once registered, you were permanently registered. There was no deregistration, no exit interview, no letter of resignation. The Roman state, having noted your existence in its ledgers, considered the matter settled for the remainder of your life, and possibly for administrative purposes beyond that. You were infames, a person of diminished legal standing. You could not testify in court. You could not marry a Roman citizen of the upper orders. You could not vote or hold office. You had accepted, by the act of registering, a permanent alteration in your civic identity that no amount of subsequent career change could undo. This meant, in practice, that registration was something a person avoided, if at all possible. Workers in informal establishments, working for private individuals, working in taverns or inns or wherever else the trade happened. Many of them never registered. They worked in the gray margin between the legal and the merely tolerated, hoping not to attract official attention. The edils knew this. The edils did not always care. The tax was useful, but the bureaucratic overhead of finding and processing every unregistered worker in a city of 20,000 people was, even by Roman standards, probably not worth it. So the official register represented a fraction of the actual trade, a documented fraction, an iceberg of paperwork above a very large ocean of arrangements that nobody was writing down. Faustus, of course, has navigated all of this. He knows which of his workers are formally registered and which are operating under a convenient administrative ambiguity. He knows which magistrate collects the tax, what day he comes, and how to make the collection visit run as quickly and uneventfully as possible. He has, over 11 years, developed the particular expertise of a person who deals with bureaucracy, not by fighting it or ignoring it, but by understanding it better than the bureaucrats do, and operating precisely within its tolerances. He is, in the vocabulary of a later era, a regulatory compliance specialist. He would probably have found the description flattering. Now, let's talk about the people who actually matter in this story. Let's start with Lydia. Lydia is, by the rough and approximate reckoning of the Lupanar, the senior worker on the premises. Not in any formal sense, because formality here is Faustus's domain, but in the way that any closed community develops its own hierarchy. its own unspoken acknowledgement of experience and knowledge, and the particular authority that comes from having survived longer than everyone else. She has been in this building for 9 years. She came from Corinth, or so she says, and nobody has ever had cause to doubt her, partly because her Greek is perfect, and partly because her Latin carries an accent that Pompeii cannot fully account for. She is, by the standards of the Lupanar, something approaching prosperous. She has negotiated, over 9 years, a position of sufficient seniority that a portion of her earnings, a small portion, a carefully negotiated portion, one in increments over years of demonstrated reliability, comes to her directly. This is not generosity. This is Faustus's acknowledgement that a worker who has something to lose is a worker who will not run. Lydia knows the names of all the regular clients. She knows which ones prefer to talk, which ones want to transact and leave, which ones need to be reminded about the rate before they start asking for things not included in the rate. She knows which soldiers are dangerous when drunk and which ones are merely tedious. She knows the festival days when business triples and the slow afternoons in January when Faustus paces the corridor with his ledger and his expression of calculated anxiety. She knows where the best lamp oil comes from, which vendor's cheese is worth eating, and exactly how long a lamp can burn before it starts to sputter. She is, by any reasonable measure, the most competent person in the building. She would like, someday, to have a small house, not a large house, not a house in Rome or Capua or anywhere grand, just a small house in Pompeii, with a garden and a door she can close from the inside with a bolt, and a cat. Specifically, a cat who is not sulfur, because sulfur belongs to the street and cannot be domesticated, as sulfur has demonstrated repeatedly and without apparent regret. A different cat, a cat with better manners and fewer opinions about whose correspondence it walks across. But Lydia is practical before she is anything else. The house is a long way away. The ledger says so. She's been adding to the ledger's counterpoint for 9 years, and she will keep adding. Then there is Martina, technically, but she introduced herself as Marta, and Marta has stuck, the way names always stick when they arrive before anyone has thought to argue with them. Marta is newer. She has been in the building for about 8 months, and her trajectory is still being worked out by Faustus, by Lydia, and by Marta herself, who is smarter than she initially appears, and significantly more stubborn than anyone has yet realized. She came from a farm outside of Nola. She is not comfortable here yet, but she has developed the particular skill of the person who is uncomfortable in a situation, but refuses to show it. The ability to look perfectly at ease while internally cataloging every available exit. Marta and Lydia are not friends. They are something more complicated, a relationship built on mutual utility and the grudging respect of two people who understand, without having to discuss it, that in this particular building, looking out for each other is simply the most pragmatic available option. Lydia teaches Marta things nobody else will tell her. Marta, in return, covers for Lydia on the occasional evening when Lydia's headache is, in Lydia's own carefully worded account, preventing her from working at her best. Nobody challenges this. Lydia's arrangement with Faustus is specific enough that even Faustus concedes the occasional headache. Then there is Sulla. Sulla is not a worker in the Lupanar. Sulla is a soldier, stationed with the garrison that manages the city's public order, and he is a regular at the Lupanar in the same way that some people are regular at a particular cafe. Not because it is the best available option, but because it is the one they've gotten used to, the one where they are known and therefore slightly less required to behave. Sulla is large, loud, and genuinely convinced that his presence constitutes a more significant contribution to the establishment than the flat rate posted at the door would suggest. He is wrong about this. Faustus knows it. Lydia definitely knows it. Even the cat knows it, insofar as Sulfur has twice walked directly across Sulla's legs while he was trying to make an entrance, which Lydia found extremely satisfying both times. Sulla is not malicious. He is just precisely the kind of person who becomes exhausting at scale, fundamentally decent but thoroughly convinced of his own importance, with enough physical size and legal authority as a soldier to make the conviction difficult to immediately contradict. He will feature in this story again. Nobody is delighted about this. And finally, speaking of the cat, Sulfur. Sulfur is an orange tabby of indeterminate age and aggressively independent temperament who lives primarily in the alley behind the Lupanar, but who has discovered that the gap under the corridor door is precisely cat-sized, and that the Lupanar, for all its various disadvantages, is reliably warm and occasionally has fish. Sulfur therefore enters and exits as he pleases, which is the most freedom anyone in the building has. He has no particular affiliation with any individual person. He sits where he wants. He leaves when he wants. He regards the entire enterprise with the faint disdain of a creature who has assessed all available situations and found them beneath comment. Faustus is allergic to sulfur. He has been trying to remove sulfur from the building for approximately 3 years. Sulfur has not registered this effort. Let's talk about the daily routine. The Lupanar does not have hours exactly. Not hours in the way a modern business has hours. A sign on the door, a set time to open, a set time to close. The Lupanar is open in the way a city is open, continuously, with periods of higher and lower intensity, but never a complete cessation of activity, because the city itself never stops, and the city's needs do not follow a schedule. But there is a rhythm to the day, and once you've been here long enough, you feel it the way you feel the rhythm of any place you inhabit, not consciously, but in your body, in the way you know it's almost noon without looking at a clock. The rhythm goes roughly like this. The morning is quiet. This is the truth about the Lupanar that nobody who has never spent a morning inside one knows. The first hours of the day are genuinely, almost poignantly peaceful. The lamps are low or extinguished. The stone rooms are cool. Marta is still asleep, which she does with the total commitment of someone making up for lost time. Lydia is awake, as Lydia always is, sitting on the edge of her stone bed with a piece of bread and a small cup of watered wine. Posca, the cheap wine vinegar that is basically the ancient world's version of water for people who cannot trust the water. And she is thinking about nothing in particular, which is not nothing at all, but is in fact the specific mental state that looks like nothing from the outside and feels like the only bearable thing in the world from the inside. Faustus arrives mid-morning, ledger in hand, and conducts his inspection of the building with the energy of a man who has fully committed to the performance of management. He checks the oil supply. He notes the state of the mattresses, which he does not replace as often as he should, and which everyone knows he does not replace as often as he should, and which nobody says out loud. He reviews the previous day's earnings against the previous day's expenditures and makes the small, private adjustment to his expression that is his version of either satisfaction or disappointment, depending on which way the numbers have landed. By early afternoon, the foot traffic begins. The lunch hour brings workers from the forum, from the market, from the forum baths, men who have a window in their day and know exactly how they want to fill it. The clientele at this hour is, by ancient standards, relatively respectable. Merchants, artisans, freedmen with a bit of money, the occasional lower-ranking official who has calculated that the magistrate's office does not open again until the second hour of the afternoon, and who has timed things accordingly. These are, by Lydia's private taxonomy, the sensible ones, a category she applies without warmth, but with genuine gratitude. They know the rate. They do not argue. They leave when the time is up. The afternoon brings the soldiers. Sulla is among them, but not the worst of them. Soldiers in 78 AD are not paid particularly well. The base pay for a legionary is around 225 denarii a year, which sounds like more than it is when you subtract food, equipment, and the various deductions the army makes before anyone sees a coin. And soldiers have strong feelings about the rates posted at the door of the Lupanar, which they express by negotiating, and about the outcome of those negotiations, which they express by sometimes simply not leaving when asked. Faustus handles the soldiers with the patient efficiency of a man who has had this argument approximately 4,000 times and knows exactly when to appeal to civic duty and when to send someone to find the duty centurion. The evening is different from the afternoon, the way a tide is different from a river. The same element, but different in pressure, in temperature, in what it brings with it. After dark, the carts begin in the street outside, grinding and rattling over the basalt, and the noise of the city changes registers, lower, rougher, more anonymous. The evening brings the clients who prefer the cover of darkness, which is most of the clients, because anonymity in the ancient world is as valuable a commodity as it is in any era. Senators who would never be seen at the Lupanar in daylight are here now. Wealthy merchants. Young men from good families who are conducting their educations in ways their fathers are choosing not to examine too closely. They are all anonymous. Anonymity is the only luxury the Lupanar provides free of charge. Lydia works her shift. Marta works hers. The lamp burns down. Someone somewhere is carving their name into the wall. Sulfur is sleeping in the corridor, directly in front of Faustus's door, for reasons that are purely territorial and entirely feline. The night goes on. Let's talk about the food. This is a chapter that requires a certain amount of courage on the part of both narrator and listener. Roman food in general requires a recalibration of expectations. Roman food in the context of the Lupanar requires a specific and targeted reduction of expectations to a level that your previous minimum would regard as ambitious. The workers of the Lupanar eat. This should not need to be stated. But the historical imagination sometimes fails at the obvious. And so, they eat. Every day, usually twice. The food is simple, because the food in Pompeii is almost always simple for people without significant wealth. And the workers of the Lupanar are not people with significant wealth. The diet is what you might call the Roman working class baseline. Bread, olives, olive oil, garum, occasional cheese, occasional eggs, and wine. Always wine. Because water in an ancient city is a calculated risk, and wine, at least the cheap watered kind, has at least had alcohol pass through it, which kills some of the things the water carries. The bread comes from one of the bakeries nearby. Faustus has an arrangement with one of them, which means the bread is slightly less fresh than it might be, but is at least reliable, and is delivered every morning without anyone having to go and get it. The bread of Pompeii is not the baguette situation your imagination might provide. It is small, round, hard-crusted, scored in sections like a wheel of cheese, dense and slightly gritty. The millstones of the Roman world, ground from volcanic rock, left tiny fragments of stone in the flour that gradually ground down the teeth of anyone who ate Roman bread regularly for 20 years, which most Romans did. The teeth of Pompeians examined in the archaeological record are not good teeth. They are the teeth of a people whose bread fought back. The olives are good. This is something the ancient Mediterranean world genuinely got right. Olive oil is everywhere, good quality, and used for everything: cooking, lighting, cleaning, personal hygiene, which we'll get to. Olives appear on the table in a small bowl, dark and pickled and slightly salty, and they are, by some distance, the most pleasant thing about lunch. Lydia eats her olives with the focused appreciation of someone who has identified the best part of a limited situation and is determined to extract full value from it. The garum is where things become interesting. Garum, the fermented fish sauce that the Romans treated as a universal condiment, a flavoring agent, and a general improver of everything from stewed vegetables to boiled eggs, is made by packing layers of fish and salt into large clay jars and leaving them in the sun to ferment for weeks or months, producing a liquid that is simultaneously very salty, very umami, very pungent, and, to the modern palate, the kind of thing you might encounter at the back of a very adventurous deli and then politely put back. To a Roman, garum is like olive oil or salt, so fundamental to the way food tastes that food without it seems unfinished. The workers of the Lupanar put garum on bread. They put garum on cheese. They put garum in wine, occasionally, which produces something that sounds catastrophic, but which historical evidence suggests was a genuine preference. Garum is on everything. The entire neighborhood smells of it by noon, and this is not considered a problem. The wine is pasca, wine vinegar diluted with water, the drink of soldiers and working people across the Roman world, and the beverage equivalent of a budget airline. Gets you where you're going, makes no promises about the experience. It is tart, it is thin, it is barely recognizable as wine to anyone who has encountered wine in a more aspirational context. But it is safe to drink in a city where the water supply runs through lead pipes and collects things along the way. And it is cheap, and it is always available. And in a life that contains a number of things that are neither safe, nor available, nor cheap, pasca is a small, and genuine comfort. Marta, who came from a farm, occasionally and quietly misses the food from home with an intensity she does not discuss with anyone because there is nothing to be done about it. And discussing things you can do nothing about is a form of suffering. She has decided to decline. She misses the particular flatbread her mother made. She misses fresh figs. She eats her bread and olives and garum without complaint, and saves the complaint for the things she can actually do something about, which is a philosophy that serves her well in the Lupanar, and would serve her equally well in almost any other situation she might find herself in. Sulla, when he is off duty, eats at the thermopolium down the lane, hot lentil stew and bread, poured over with an aggressive quantity of garum, and the proprietor has started ladling it out before Sulla has finished asking for it, which Sulla takes as a mark of respect, and which the proprietor means simply as efficiency. They are both, in their way, correct. Sulfur eats fish when fish is available, which is more often than you might expect in a city this close to the sea, and small unidentified things from the alley when fish is not. He is not losing weight. He is, by all appearances, thriving. Let's talk about the tokens. This is the part of the Roman Lupanar experience that modern historians cannot entirely agree on, which makes it either more interesting or more frustrating, depending on your tolerance for scholarly ambiguity. It is, in either case, fascinating. Across the Roman world, archaeologists have found small coins, round, bronze, or lead, sometimes brass, stamped on one side with a numeral and on the other side with an image that is explicitly sexual in nature. These have been called spintriae, a Latin word that appears in ancient sources in connection with sexual practices, though the exact etymology is disputed. They are small. They are clearly intentional. They were made in quantity. And for a very long time, the dominant theory was that they were tokens, a currency substitute used specifically in brothels, where the client exchanged real money with the emperor's face on it for a token with something considerably more specific on it, and then used the token as payment for services, thereby allowing the transaction to be conducted without either party having to handle coins bearing the imperial portrait in a context that even the Romans found awkward. This theory has the virtue of elegance and the problem of limited direct evidence. Some modern scholars think the spintriae were gaming tokens. Some think they were tickets for theatrical performances. Some think they were exactly what the brothel theory says they were. Nobody has found a definitive text from the ancient world that settles the question with the kind of clarity that would allow someone to write a confident Wikipedia article about it. But here is what is true. In the Lupanar, payment happened somehow, and the payment was for services that were posted on the door or communicated by some other means, and the economy of the Lupanar was cash-based and frequent and conducted by people who came from every social class and did not necessarily want the details of their presence here itemized in any permanent record. A token system. Whether or not the spintriae were specifically brothel tokens makes complete sense in this context, in the same way that the existence of casino chips makes sense in a casino. When you separate the money from the transaction becomes slightly easier to not think about. You, standing in the corridor of the Lupanar with a small bronze disc in your hand, understand this instinctively. The disc is cool and heavy for its size, and the image on the front is not subtle. You close your fingers around it. The lamplight catches the edge of it. Somewhere at the other end of the corridor, Faustus is in his room running numbers in his ledger, and the numbers are all connected, ultimately, to discs like this one, moving from hands to hands in the particular quiet economy of a building that prefers not to discuss itself too loudly. And yet, even in this transactional space, things are not purely transactional. Nothing with people in it ever is. The regular clients develop preferences. The workers develop, if not affection, at least familiarity. The particular tolerance of people who have sat across from each other enough times to have run out of things to pretend about. Old Titus, for instance, who we'll get to properly in a moment, has been coming to the Lupanar for so long that he knows everyone's name and has opinions about the lamp oil quality, and once brought Lydia a small jar of good olives from the market as though this were the most normal thing in the world. It was, in its way, the most normal thing in the world. The disc sits in your palm. You close your fingers around it again. It's warm now. Let's talk about the hygiene. And here is where things become, historically speaking, both better and worse than you expect simultaneously. Better. The Romans cared about cleanliness to a degree that would surprise anyone who assumed the ancient world was uniformly filthy. They had public baths, thermae, in every city of any significance, and Pompeii had at least 3 major bath complexes operating simultaneously, plus smaller private bathing facilities. The baths were a social institution as central to Roman life as the forum or the tavern. You went to the baths not just to wash, but to meet people, conduct business, exercise, gossip, argue, and simply exist in a warm, social space where the normal distinctions of rank were slightly softened by the fact that everyone was wearing approximately the same amount of clothing, which was not much. The baths charged a minimal entry fee, sometimes as little as a quadrans, a quarter of an A's, about the same as a bread roll. Inside, you moved through a sequence of rooms, the apoditerium, where you undressed and stored your things, and hoped they would still be there when you came back, which was a genuine and documented concern. The frigidarium, a cold plunge pool. The tepidarium, a warm room. The caldarium, the hot room, with steam and heated floors and the specific atmosphere of a very old spa whose cleaning schedule is more aspirational than actual. To bathe, you applied olive oil to your skin, worked it in, and then scraped it off with a curved metal tool called a strigil, removing the oil and the dirt together. This is the Roman shower, oil and a scraper, in a hot room, in company. It is surprisingly effective. It is also responsible for the fact that ancient Romans smelled primarily of olive oil and warm stone, which, relative to the alternatives available in a pre-plumbing city, is not bad. The workers of the Lupanar went to the baths. They went regularly and strategically, before work rather than after, because the logic of the chronology requires it, and because in a building where proximity is the baseline condition and ventilation is whatever the door and the gap under the door allow, cleanliness is a professional and personal necessity in roughly equal measure. Lydia preferred the Stabian baths, which were the largest and best maintained in Pompeii, with a women's section that offered a reasonable approximation of privacy. Marta used whichever baths were least crowded at whatever hour she arrived. Worse, the Romans' understanding of disease was approximately 2,000 years behind ours, and the consequences of this in the context of the Lupanar were what you would expect them to be. Roman medicine was a complicated mixture of genuine empirical observation, religious ritual, elaborate superstition, and heroic self-confidence. Physicians existed. Pompeii had them. They were trained. Some were quite competent for their era. But the germ theory of disease was not merely undiscovered. The very concept of infectious microorganisms was so far outside the available framework of understanding that there was no word for it. Disease was caused by bad air, by imbalanced bodily humors, by the displeasure of the gods, or by various environmental factors that physicians argued about vigorously and incorrectly. Treatment therefore involved herbs, fumigation, various poultices, careful dietary adjustment, and sometimes the surgical confidence of a person with very clean instruments and very incomplete anatomical knowledge. For the workers of the Lupanar, the medical challenges were specific and persistent and dealt with by a combination of available remedies, practical harm reduction measures that were not understood as such, and a degree of resigned acceptance that speaks to a particular kind of courage that history often forgets to name. You stand in the caldarium of the Stabian baths, in the steam, and the noise of the city outside is muffled to something almost abstract. The heat is extraordinary. The floors are literally hollow beneath you, heated by a furnace below, radiating upward through the stone. Someone has left a strigil on the bench. The oil on your skin is warm. For a moment, in the steam, in the warmth, in the white noise of the furnace and the distant noise of the city, you feel what the Romans felt in the baths: clean, briefly, and almost safe. And that was enough. It had to be. Let's talk about the clients. The clientele of the Lupanar of Pompeii was, by the available evidence, and the available evidence includes the graffiti, the archaeology, and the sheer demographics of a city of this size. Approximately everyone. This is not hyperbole. Roman society was socially rigid in a way that modern democracies have largely, with considerable effort, moved away from. And yet, the Lupanar was one of the very few spaces in Roman Pompeii where the rigid categories of citizen, freedman, slave, soldier, merchant, and official were temporarily suspended, not out of any democratic principle, but simply because anonymity in the dark produces a practical kind of equality that ideology never quite manages. The senator, who would never share a dining room with a freedman, shared the corridor of the Lupanar with him. The soldier who would be flogged for insubordinating a centurion handed his token over in the same room where the centurion handed his. The moral geography of the Roman city stopped at the threshold. At the lower end of the economic scale, the clients were soldiers, tradespeople, visiting merchants, sailors passing through, slaves with permission or without it, freed men with a bit of money and an evening to spend. They came in, they paid the rate, they left. They were the majority of the business, the steady, reliable traffic that kept the lamp oil purchased and the bread arriving. At the middle and upper end, things became more complicated in exactly the ways you'd expect. Wealthy clients wanted more than the standard arrangement. They wanted time to talk, or to be distracted, or to play at being in a private arrangement rather than a commercial one. They brought better wine occasionally. One famously regular client, not Titus, a different one, whose name does not survive but whose habits were documented by 3 separate workers in the graffiti, brought dates stuffed with nuts from the shop near the Forum every Tuesday, with the regularity of a man delivering a dividend. He was, by all accounts, otherwise entirely unremarkable, but the dates were excellent, and in the economy of small pleasures, excellent dates on a Tuesday are not nothing. Old Titus, whose full name was Gaius Titus Marcellus, a freedman of some years and modest prosperity, who had retired from a career in textile trading and now spent his considerable free time doing the things that people who have worked hard for many years do when they no longer have to work, was something different. Titus was not, in the strict sense, a client with specific requirements. He was a client with a preference for Lydia's company, and enough self-awareness to understand that this preference was a commercial one, and enough tact to never say so aloud. He came perhaps twice a month. He paid the standard rate without argument. He sometimes talked about the weather, about the news from Rome, about a shipment of textiles that had gone wrong in some complicated way that he found genuinely funny. And Lydia listened, because listening is a skill she has, and because Titus was not unpleasant, and because, in a profession where you spend a great deal of time being observed, someone who treats the transaction as mutual in even a small way is genuinely noticeable. He brought the olives once. Lydia accepted them with the slightly complicated expression of a person receiving a kindness they did not ask for and do not know entirely what to do with. She ate the olives. They were very good. She did not say this to Titus, but he seemed to know it anyway, in the specific way of old men who have stopped needing to be told things to know them. Let's talk about the graffiti. The walls of the Lupanar speak. They have been speaking for 2,000 years, and they show no signs of stopping. And what they say is, this is the only honest word for it, extraordinary. There are currently, in the documented record of the Pompeii Lupanar alone, more than 120 pieces of graffiti covering the walls of the building. More than 120 individual voices scratched into the plaster by people who were there, who wanted to leave some mark of their having been there, in a building that was otherwise designed to make the fact of your having been there as invisible as possible. The irony is perfect. In the one place in Pompeii, most dedicated to anonymity, everyone signed their name. Some of the graffiti is exactly what you'd expect. Boasts, rankings, prices. Here I have screwed many girls, from a man whose confidence appears inversely proportional to his self-awareness. Names of workers with ratings attached, like ancient Yelp reviews written by people who had never once stopped to consider whether this was a good idea. Numbers, dates, the kind of graffiti that every public space in every era accumulates, the unchanging baseline of human wall communication. But then there are the others. Vibius Restitutus slept here alone, missing his urbana. This scratched into a stone wall in a brothel in 78 AD. A man who was here, alone, and was thinking about someone who was not here, someone named Urbana, and found himself sufficiently moved by the absence that he needed to write it down on a wall. In a brothel, in the middle of the night, surrounded by everything the brothel had to offer, and thinking about Urbana. This sentence has survived volcanic eruption, 2,000 years of burial, and the full catastrophic weight of human civilization rearranging itself 3 or 4 times over, and it still means exactly what it meant when it was written, in the middle of a night by a man who was lonely. Romulus stayed here with Staphylos. Not a boast, not a price, just a fact recorded with the specificity of people who wanted to be remembered as having been somewhere together. Romula and Staphylos, whoever they were here together, and they wrote it down, and 2 millennia later, we know their names and the fact of their having been present in the same room at the same time, which is more than we know about millions of Romans who lived considerably more conventionally. There are love declarations. There are curses. There is, in one corner, an argument spanning what appear to be 3 separate graffiti by 3 different hands. A comment thread from 2,000 years before the internet was invented, demonstrating that the human impulse to have the last word in a public forum has remained perfectly stable across the entire recorded span of civilization. And there are the workers' own marks. Fragments, really. A name, a date, a personal observation. But they're there. In a building where the workers had very little power over most things, the wall was something they could mark. Something that said, I was here. I was a person. I had a name. I had opinions about the quality of the olive oil and the temperature of the winter and the clients who came on Thursdays, specifically, who were uniformly the most difficult. Lydia, you notice, has written something near the corner of her room, at the height of someone sitting on the edge of the bed. You lean close to the lamp to read it. It is in Greek. Your Latin is functional, but your Greek is rusty, and the handwriting is small and careful and idiosyncratic. You can make out a name, her own, you think. And a number, and a word that you are almost certain means enough, and then a word that might be tomorrow, or might be the next day, and you are not sure whether that is hopeful or not, and you sit back on the edge of the stone bed and look at the lamp and think about Urbana, wherever she was. Let's be honest about the cells, the rooms themselves, the individual cells, the celli meretrici, the working rooms of the Lupanar deserve their own chapter, because they are the axis around which everything in this building turns, and because understanding what it meant to work and live inside one of these rooms is the closest you can get to understanding what it meant to be a worker in the Roman sex trade. The rooms are small. We have established this. They are approximately 2.5 meters wide and 3 meters long, roughly 8 feet by 10 feet in the measurement system your brain uses instinctively, which means that with the stone bed platform taking up the back third of the room, you have a floor space roughly the size of a generous dining table. The ceiling is low, maybe 2 meters, 2.5 at the peak of the slightly arched vault. The walls are thick stone, plastered and whitewashed, covered now in years of lamp soot near the ceiling and graffiti everywhere else. The door is wooden, hung on iron pivots with a ring pull latch on the inside. There is a curtain rod above the door. When the curtain is hung, heavy cloth, usually dark, the room becomes private, insofar as private means you cannot see in from the corridor without lifting the curtain. The acoustic privacy of the curtain is the acoustic privacy of a curtain, which is to say approximately none. The walls of Roman buildings are solid stone and mortar, and solid stone and mortar transmit sound with a fidelity that the Romans did not require, because the Romans were not, in this context, particularly concerned about it. The lamp sits on a small stone shelf built into the wall beside the bed, a shelf precisely the right size for one small terracotta lamp, because whoever built this room understood its purpose with architectural precision and designed accordingly. The lamp burns olive oil through a wick, providing a warm, yellowish, slightly unsteady light that gives the room the ambience of a very intimate dinner or a very serious interrogation, depending on your mood. It smells of hot oil. It does not aspire to be more than functional. The lamp and the room are of a piece. On the wall beside the bed, not visible from the doorway, requiring you to be inside and seated on the stone platform to see it, there is a small drawing, not erotic, just a drawing, a figure that might be a person or might be a bird, small and slightly uncertain in its lines, the kind of drawing you make when you have a stylus and a moment and nothing in particular you are trying to achieve. Someone drew this. Someone sat on the stone bed in this small room with a stylus and drew a small figure on the wall beside them because they had a moment that was their own, and they chose to spend it making something. You sit on the stone bed. The mattress, wool-stuffed, slightly flattened, smelling of the particular concentrated intimacy of a mattress that has not been replaced in some years, is under you. The lamp is warm beside your knee. The curtain over the door is half open, letting in the light from the corridor and the distant noise of the street. The stone beneath the mattress is cold. You can feel it through the wool, steady and permanent and indifferent. You sit there for a moment. The city outside keeps going. The lamp keeps burning. And the small figure on the wall beside you looks back at you with its uncertain lines and its 2,000 years of patience, and you think, someone was here, right here, just like this. And that means something? Let's talk about the language. The Romans had a great many words for what happened in the Lupanar, in the same way that any culture has a great many words for the things it thinks about often but doesn't fully know how to discuss. Latin, as a language, is extremely good at inventing precise terminology for situations it wants to categorize, and the Romans categorized the sex trade with the same bureaucratic thoroughness they brought to road construction, aqueduct engineering, and military logistics. The workers were meretrices, from the verb mereo, to earn. Not paid women or available women, or any of the more colorful synonyms, available. Earners. The word is almost aggressively functional. It treats the profession as an economic activity with an entirely neutral vocabulary, the way an accountant might describe a category of revenue. And then, underneath the official terminology, Latin has the informal synonyms, the ones used in graffiti, in poetry, in the street, because official terminology never actually describes the thing it's naming, only the idea of it. Lupa, she-wolf, scrotum, hide or skin. Meretrix, for the taxpayer. Lupa, for the person on the wall. Amica, friend, for the woman whose real nature everyone in the room understood and nobody said aloud. The building itself was named for the wolf, Lupanar, from lupa. The etymology runs back to the wolf because wolves howl, and the sound of the lupanar at night was sometimes described as howling, which is either poetic or clinical, depending on who is describing it. the Romans chose wolf. They gave the word to the building and the word to the women in it, and somewhere in the gap between the official meretrix and the street corner lupa, the actual human beings lived their actual lives. The language of the clients was equally layered. To visit the Lupanar in polite circles was to be understood without being stated. Men of good family who patronized the establishments, which was most men of good family, given that marriage was a dynastic arrangement and the Lupanar was close to the forum and nobody was looking, did not discuss it in the same vocabulary they used to discuss their dinners or their legal cases. They spoke around it with the practiced indirection of people who have learned that language can be both true and deniable at the same time. Faustus, who has to conduct business in both vocabularies simultaneously, official when the magistrate comes, informal when the soldier at the door is already 3 cups in and struggling with vocabulary, has become fluent in all registers. He speaks to the aediles collector in the language of tax law. He speaks to Sulla in the language of hospitality and patience. He speaks to the workers in the language of accounts. He speaks to Lydia in something that approaches, not quite, the language of 2 people who have worked in the same building for 9 years and have arrived at a complicated, unspoken understanding that neither of them would describe as friendship, but which functions as one in the specific and limited ways that matter. And Lydia herself speaks 3 languages: her native Greek, her working Latin, and the silence she uses for the things that don't fit in either. The silence is the most precise language of the 3. Let's not forget about old Titus. He arrives on a Thursday, always Thursday, for reasons he has never articulated, in the early afternoon, when the light in the corridor is warmest, and the foot traffic is at its polite daytime minimum. He is, to the eye, entirely ordinary. A man of perhaps 60 years, heavy-set, with the specific gait of a person whose feet have stopped being entirely cooperative after decades of standing in markets. His toga is clean and properly arranged. His sandals are good quality, worn well. He carries a small cloth bag with him, the dates bag in Lydia's private taxonomy, though today it turns out to be dried figs, which she accepts with only slightly less surprise than the first time he brought anything at all. Titus has been coming to the Lupanar for some years, not since its founding, but long enough that he has known Faustus through 2 different versions of their professional relationship. Before and after, Faustus stopped pretending not to be relieved when Titus appeared, rather than someone more difficult. Titus does not negotiate. Titus does not complain. Titus pays the rate and occupies the room for approximately the duration of a long lunch and then leaves. He talks. He talks about the market, about the quality of textiles available in Pompeii compared to what he used to get direct from the east, about a neighbor who has built a wall that is technically within legal limits, but which is clearly intended to obstruct the morning light in a way that Titus regards as a personal affront. He talks about Rome. He visited Rome once, years ago, and remains mildly traumatized by the density of it, the noise, the smell of a city 10 times bigger than Pompeii, packed into a geography that is not scaled to meet it. He talks about his wife, who died 3 years ago, in the matter-of-fact tone of a man who has been sad about something for long enough that the sadness has become part of the general texture of his life, rather than a separate, acute thing. Lydia listens. She has found over the years that listening is not a skill she performs. It is one she has. She remembers details. She asks a question the next time about the wall or the neighbor or the textiles, and Titus lights up slightly, not because he is flattered, but because being remembered is one of the specific hungers that a city of 20,000 people, anonymous, crowded, continuous, regularly produces and rarely satisfies. Being remembered by someone means that your existence has registered somewhere beyond your own internal accounting. Even if that someone is being paid to be present, the remembering still happened, and it is still real. Lydia brings Titus another cup of the house's pasca, which is, she has warned him, not good, which he already knows, and which he accepts with the gracious resignation of a man who has come to terms with the quality of available wine at his age. They sit in the small room. The lamp is bright. Somewhere outside, Sulphur is conducting a territorial dispute with a neighbor's cat, loudly and with conviction. Titus leaves eventually, nodding to Faustus in the corridor, with the careful formality of two men who have tacitly agreed to acknowledge each other's presence in this specific location without speculating about it. He descends the lane. He turns at the corner, and he goes home to his house without his wife in it, carrying the empty cloth bag, to sit in the afternoon light with whatever it is that old men sit with in the afternoon light when the children have gone and the work is done and the city continues, indifferent and enormous, around them. Lydia eats one of the dried figs. It is good. She allows herself this. Now let's talk about the night. The day in Pompeii has a texture, as we've established. But the night is different, not darker in terms of attitude, but different in temperature, in the quality of its anonymity, in the specific character of its traffic. After dark, the city belongs to different people, or the same people in different modes, and the Lupanar belongs to the night in a way that the afternoon visits of the sensible merchants do not fully prepare you for. The carts begin at dusk, rumbling over the basalt, with the inevitability of a municipal process that no individual has ever figured out how to stop. The thermopolia start serving the evening crowd. Hot lentils, stewed vegetables, wine that is marginally better than pasca, served across the stone counter to people who need food before or after their evening's work, depending on the nature of the work. The lamplighters have done their rounds, and the city is lit now with the particular soft and pooled light of oil lamps and stone brackets, circles of orange warmth separated by stretches of genuine, deep Roman darkness. In the darkness between the lamplight, people move more freely. This is the point of the darkness in a city with this degree of social surveillance. In the forum at noon, you are visible. Your toga, your face, your companions, your direction of travel, all of it available to every neighbor and client and rival and acquaintance who happens to be present. In the lane at night, you are a shape in a tunic, indistinguishable from 1,000 other shapes, and this is not an accident. The Lupanar at night has a different clientele, wealthier, generally, more nervous, generally. Men who have left their domus, their households, their families, their social identities behind them and are conducting the specific Roman ritual of the evening visit with the particular intensity of people doing something they have thought about since they woke up that morning. They come in quickly, through the doorway, without pausing, with the practiced nonchalance of someone who has rehearsed how not to look like they're arriving somewhere significant. Spoiler: it does not quite work. Lydia, working her evening, reads them with the accuracy of a person who has had 9 years of character study in the most concentrated possible laboratory. She can tell, within 30 seconds of a new client entering the room, the rough shape of what they want. Not just the service, but the experience surrounding it. Whether they want to feel welcome, or anonymous, or powerful, or simply not alone for a specific amount of time. She adjusts accordingly, not because she has been trained to, but because she is intelligent and observant, and has found that accuracy in this particular reading is the most efficient possible path through an evening. Marta is learning this. She is not there yet. Her readings are rougher, her adjustments more hesitant, her instincts still in development. Lydia has told her, once, quietly, in the corridor between clients, "You don't have to like anyone. You don't have to want to be here. You just have to be accurate. Read what's in front of you. The rest takes care of itself, sort of." Marta has been chewing on that "sort of" for 3 weeks. The night goes on. The lamps burn lower. The clients thin out after the second hour of darkness. There's a rhythm to this too, a kind of tide. And by the third hour, it is mostly quiet. The occasional footstep in the lane outside, the distant grinding of a cart, the sound of the building settling into itself. Lydia is in her room, awake as she tends to be at this hour, with nothing in particular she needs to do, and nothing in particular she wants to think about, which makes the small hours of the Roman night remarkably similar to the small hours of any night anywhere. She hears sulfur in the corridor, his specific step, the particular weight of him, and then a thump as he lands on the stone shelf near the lamp and begins washing his face with the intensity of a creature who is never too tired for self-maintenance. She looks at him in the lamplight. He looks back at her with the orange eyes of a cat who has assessed all available situations and found them acceptable. She goes back to her thoughts. The lamp burns. The city outside breathes in the dark. Let's talk about the danger. The Lupanar, for all its informal rhythms and its small human warmths, is not a safe place in the way that safe implies the absence of risk. It is safe in the way that familiar things are safe. You know the shape of its dangers. You have mapped them. You can navigate around most of them most of the time. But the dangers are real, and they require navigation. The first danger is Sulla. Sulla has already been established as a person of moderate menace and sincere self-delusion, but the full version of Sulla, the version that makes Lydia's particular expression appear when he enters the building, is a man who has convinced himself that his military status constitutes a kind of standing credit arrangement with the Lupanar, which it does not, and who becomes, when confronted with this fact after 3 cups of wine, a problem requiring active management. On the night in question, a warm Tuesday in late summer, with a moon that is doing more than its share, and a breeze that carries the smell of the sea and something else, a faint, sulphurous note from the mountain, though nobody has noticed this yet. Sulla arrives at the Lupanar approximately 2 hours after dark, louder than the night requires, with the specific energy of a man who has made a decision, before he's walked through the door and intends to make it everyone's problem. He wants the rate adjusted. He is a soldier. He protects this city. He was at a battle. And here, Sulla offers a specific military engagement that he was, in fact, nowhere near, but which he has rehearsed with enough conviction that it has acquired the texture of personal experience. He wants it known that the Lupanar would not exist without the safety provided by the garrison, and that this safety should be reflected in the pricing. Faustus has heard this argument so many times that his response to it has evolved into something almost architectural. Perfectly smooth surfaces that offer no traction, deflecting Sulla's energy sideways without any point of friction that could escalate. He agrees, broadly, that the garrison provides an important service. He notes that the Lupanar has always maintained good relations with the military. He regrets that the rate is fixed and is not within his personal authority to adjust, as this would require authorization from, and here, Faustus invents, with practiced specificity, a regulatory body that does not exist, but sounds entirely plausible in the lamplight. The relevant municipal office, which is closed at this hour. Sulla argues. Faustus absorbs the argument with the patience of a man who has turned absorbing arguments into a skill of almost geological durability. Lydia, who can hear all of this through the thin corridor wall, is sitting on her bed, eating a piece of bread, listening with the resigned attention of a person watching a familiar play whose ending she already knows. Eventually, and this is the shape of the Sulla problem, its reliable conclusion, Sulla pays the rate. He pays it with visible bad grace and muttered commentary on the general unfairness of things, but he pays it because the alternative is to leave, and leaving is the one thing Sulla's pride will not allow him to do after having made this much entrance. He pays, he goes. He comes back next week and has a shorter version of the same argument. Faustus absorbs it. The Lupanar continues. The larger danger, the one that cannot be managed by patience and invented bureaucracy, is the constitutional one. The law, which the Lupanar operates inside of with careful precision, is also the thing that could destroy any individual within it at any moment, because the legal standing of the workers is essentially absent. They cannot bring a complaint to the magistrate. They cannot sue for wages. They cannot formally object to conditions. Their official status strips them of the mechanisms by which a Roman citizen might seek redress for any grievance at all. This means that the entire safety of the workers depends on the informal arrangements within the building, on Faustus's calculation that healthy workers are productive workers, on Lydia's informal authority as the senior person who has been here longest and knows the most, on the network of mutual knowledge that the workers have built over years of proximity. None of this is law. All of it is more reliable, in practice, than law. It is the specific resilience of people who have learned to build protection structures out of whatever materials survive after the official structures have excluded them. It is not justice. It is not freedom. But it is, in its way, a kind of community. And communities keep people alive in ways that the law, in this particular case, simply doesn't. Let's talk about what they dreamed about. Every place has its escape fantasies, and the Lupanar has more than most, because the gap between where you are and where you might want to be is, in the Lupanar, both very clear and very specific. The workers of the Lupanar do not, for the most part, dream vague dreams. They dream practical ones, calibrated by experience to the size of the possible. Lydia dreams of the house. The small house with the garden and the door that bolts from the inside, and a cat with better manners than sulfur. She has been dreaming this dream for 9 years, and over 9 years, it has acquired the kind of detail that only long familiarity produces. The garden has a fig tree, and the kitchen faces east, so the morning light comes in, and the door is made of good timber with iron hinges that close without squeaking. She has approximately enough set aside, the portion of her earnings that Faustus has allowed her to keep, accumulated over 9 years of small amounts, to make this dream achievable in perhaps another 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years is a long time in the Lupanar. It is also a manageable amount of time, viewed correctly. Lydia views it correctly. Marta dreams of home, but she is practical enough to know that home, in the way she means it, no longer exists in the form she left it. The farm outside Nola has changed. Her mother is older. The specific texture of the life she remembers is gone in the way that the specific texture of any life you've left goes. The form remains, perhaps, but the feeling of it is irretrievable. So Marta is in the process of dreaming a different dream, slower and less formed than Lydia's, but present. The sense that this is temporary, a passage, not a destination. She does not yet know what is at the other end of the passage. She's walking toward the end of it, which is enough for now. It has to be. Other workers in the building dream of manumission, freedom from the legal condition of slavery, if they are enslaved, or of debt settlement if they are not. Some dream of a specific person, a relative, a lover, someone who exists outside this building, and who represents the existence of an outside. Some dream of simply not being tired, which is, when you reach it through the long journey of various more ambitious dreams that have dissolved under the weight of circumstance, actually a remarkably coherent aspiration. Even Faustus has a dream, though calling it a dream might be generous. It is more a projection, a number on a page, a year in which the ledger will show a balance that allows him to stop running this building. He has not decided what comes after. He has decided what comes before. Enough. He is working toward enough. Whether enough looks like dignity from the outside is a question he has stopped asking, because the outside's opinion of him has not changed and is not going to change. And there is a kind of freedom in the permanence of other people's contempt. At least, you know exactly what you're dealing with. He does not tell anyone about this. He keeps it in the ledger, in a number at the bottom of the right-hand column that he adds to on good days, and does not look at on bad ones. Let's talk about what the city doesn't know about itself. The mountain, Vesuvius. Though in 78 AD, the Romans do not necessarily have this as its primary name. They call it, among other things, simply the mountain, the way people call familiar things, the thing they are without needing to specify further, has been producing signs for some time. Springs in the area have dried up. The local fauna is behaving in ways that attentive people find slightly unusual. There have been tremors. The Romans are not inexperienced with tremors. Pompeii was significantly damaged by a large earthquake in 62 AD and is still, even now, in various stages of rebuilding and repair. And so, tremors, individually, are not alarming. The pattern of them over the past months might be alarming to someone trained to read it. Most people in Pompeii are not trained to read it. In the Lupanar, the question of the mountain does not arise. The business of the Lupanar does not leave much room for geological observation. And yet, the mountain is there, always at the edge of the sensory field, on clear days visible above the rooflines, enormous and calm and utterly indifferent, its upper slopes green in the spring, brown now in the summer heat, with a thin haze above the peak that people who have been watching for years say is slightly different from what it was, though this is the kind of difference that is easiest to see in retrospect. What the city doesn't know about itself in 78 AD is that it has approximately 1 year left. The eruption will happen in 79 AD, and it will preserve the city in a capsule of volcanic material 6 meters deep that will hold it, suspended in its last afternoon, for more than 1,500 years. The Lupanar will survive. Its walls, its stone beds, its frescoes, its graffiti, all of it will be buried and all of it will emerge. And because of that eruption, we know more about the workers of the Pompeii Lupanar than we know about the residents of almost any other building in any other city of comparable era. The catastrophe that ended everything is the reason we know anything at all. This is, depending on your perspective, the most Roman thing about the whole story. That an institution built on silence and anonymity was preserved precisely because it was built to last, and that the walls everyone wrote on, the walls everyone assumed would be covered by the next layer of whitewash, the next layer of graffiti, the accumulated erasure of time, instead lasted 2,000 years in the ash. The lamp burns in the small room. Lydia is asleep, finally, after a long Thursday. Marta is awake still, looking at the ceiling. Titus is home, in his house, in his chair. Sulla is at the garrison, asleep with the effortless sleep of a man who has never spent a night awake worrying about anything he cannot resolve by being louder about it. Faustus has closed his ledger and blown out his lamp. Sulfur is in the alley, conducting a private midnight inspection of the neighborhood, his orange tail erect, his movements entirely purposeful. The city breathes in the dark. The mountain breathes too, though nobody is listening for it. Let's talk about community, because this is the chapter that everything else in this script has been moving toward, even when it seemed to be moving toward something else. This is the thing the Lupanar contains that the ledger doesn't show, and the magistrate's register doesn't capture, and the graffiti only partly reveals. The fact that in this small building, in these small rooms, among these people who the Roman state had officially classified as negligible, there was a community, not a chosen community, not an idealized one, not one that anyone outside would have recognized as such, but a community in the most functional sense, a group of people who shared a space and a circumstance, and who developed, in that sharing, the specific forms of mutual care and knowledge and protection that allow people to survive things that they would not survive alone. Lydia knows when Marta has had a difficult night without Marta saying so. Not because Lydia is psychic, but because 9 years in this building have given her the specific literacy of a person who has learned to read the signs that people leave without meaning to. She brings the extra bread, she doesn't say why. Marta accepts it. Nobody discusses this because there is nothing to discuss. There is the woman who works the afternoon shift. We have not met her yet in this narrative because she has been careful to occupy the spaces that are hers and not to intrude on others. Her name is Chloe, and she came from Alexandria, and she has opinions about everything, including the quality of the lamp oil, the position of the stone bed relative to the draft from under the door, and the correct way to respond to a client who arrives already, having had the argument he's planning to have, who has taken on the informal role of maintaining the food supply and the linen. She is the person who notices when these things are running low and says so loudly enough that Faustus, who would prefer not to notice, is unable to avoid noticing. There is the particular language of the corridor, the looks and sounds and absence of sounds that communicate among the workers a catalog of information that would take paragraphs to translate into explicit speech. A particular quality of quiet from a room means one thing. A certain kind of footstep in the hall means another. The sound of Faustus opening his door to check on something is different from the sound of him opening his door to conduct an inspection. And everyone in the building knows the difference without having been taught it. These are not the bonds of friendship as a comfortable modern life produces them. The freely chosen, equally available, mutually convenient friendships of people who have other options and choose this one anyway. These are the bonds of circumstance, of shared necessity, of the specific loyalty that develops between people who have decided, without necessarily announcing it, that the only reasonable response to a situation you didn't choose is to navigate it as well as possible, and, where possible, to take people with you. In a world where trust was as rare as a spare lamp, a reliable companion was something you held on to with both hands and did not put down, even when putting it down would have been easier. And yet, in the small hours, when the building is quiet and the lamp is low, and Sulphur is sitting on the shelf washing his face with the authority of a creature who has never once questioned his right to be anywhere he wants to be. In those hours, the word community is almost too formal for what this is. It is simpler than that. It is just people, sharing walls, knowing each other's footsteps, bringing the extra bread without explanation. It is, in its way, the oldest thing in the world. Let's talk about the dawn. The morning arrives in Pompeii, the way mornings arrive in Mediterranean cities, without subtlety. One moment, the sky above the roof lines is dark, punctuated by the orange points of the street lanterns. Then, over a period of perhaps 20 minutes, the darkness becomes possible to argue with. Dark gray, then a complicated blue-gray that the Romans did not have a specific word for, but that anyone who has ever been awake for it recognizes immediately. Then, the light, coming from the east, from over the hills, from the direction of the sea beyond the hills, low and horizontal and very specific in the way that early light is specific. It finds every surface it can reach and illuminates it from the side rather than above, making the familiar strange and the stone walls glow faintly orange. The city doesn't wait for the light to wake up. The bakers have been working since before midnight. The early fishermen were at the harbor hours ago and are returning now with their catches. and the carts are still running their last circuits before the daylight prohibition returns, and Pompeii becomes, once again, a pedestrian city. But the shift is real, and you feel it even in the Lupanar. The night's particular quality of traffic gives way to the morning's, and the quality is different in the way that a room is different when the people in it change. Lydia wakes before the light is fully established. She sits up on the stone bed in the dim room, the mattress cold now because she stopped generating enough heat sometime after the 3rd hour, and she sits there in the gray light coming under the door and breathes for a moment without moving. This is, she has found, the best moment of the day. The moment before the day has started, when nothing is yet required and everything is briefly possible in the uncomplicated way of things that haven't happened yet. She breathes in lamp oil, cool stone, the distant bread smell from the bakery, and underneath everything, something faintly sulfurous that she's been noticing for a few weeks now, but hasn't had occasion to do anything about. She gets up. She straightens her tunic. She runs her hands through her hair, which is dark and still carries a trace of the perfume she applies each evening from a small alabaster jar that was a gift from, actually, she can't remember who it was from now, which tells her something about the passage of time in the Lupanar. She goes to the door and opens it. The corridor is quiet. The other rooms are closed. Marta is asleep. You can tell from the quality of silence behind her door, the specific absence of the cautious wakefulness that characterizes Marta. Awake. Faustus's door is shut. Even sulfur for once is not immediately visible, though the warmth of where he was sitting on the threshold stone suggests he was there recently and has gone on to whatever the morning holds for a cat of his particular independence. Lydia goes to the doorway of the building and stands in it, looking out into the lane. The stone is wet with the dew. A few early figures move at the far end, small and purposeful. Somewhere above the roof lines, she can just see it if she tips her head back. The mountain is clear in the morning air, enormous and steady and present. The thin haze above its peak has a color this morning that she hasn't noticed before, a kind of orangeness. She looks at it for a moment. Then she goes in to find something to eat. The morning is here. The day needs navigating. And that, in the Lupanar in Pompeii in 78 AD, is exactly enough to be getting on with. Let's step back now and take the long view. Because we have spent a long time in the Lupanar, in the lamp-lit corridor, in the small stone rooms, in the lanes of Pompeii at night, with Lydia and Marta and Faustus and Titus and even Sulla, and it is worth, before we leave, acknowledging what we have actually been doing here. We have been visiting people who were, in the formal accounting of the Roman world, not fully people, not in the legal sense, not in the civic sense. The Roman state classified the workers of the Lupanar as infames, without fame, without standing, without the full suite of rights and protections that citizenship was supposed to provide. They could not vote. They could not sue. They could not marry into the classes that ran the empire. They were registered, taxed, regulated, and officially disregarded in a system that needed them enough to codify them and was disgusted enough by them to publicly disown the codification. And yet the walls of the Lupanar speak, and what they say is not the voice of the officially recorded. It is the voice of Vibius Restitutus, missing Urbana. It is the voice of Romula and Staphylos, who were here together and wanted the universe to know it. It is Lydia's Greek words, carved at sitting height on the stone wall of the room where she has lived for 9 years, in handwriting too small to read easily, recording something private enough that she wrote it in a language most people around her couldn't read. They are here. They were here. Their voices persist in the walls like heat in stone, absorbed during the long day, still present long after the dark. The workers of the Lupanar survived things that, catalogued plainly, should not be survivable. The legal erasure of their personhood, the daily indignities of the trade, the medical risks of an era without germ theory, the social contempt of a civilization that used them and despised them simultaneously, and did all of this with a kind of bone-deep pragmatism and quiet humor that history has not always taken the time to notice. They survived these things by building, in the space left available to them, the structures that allowed survival: community, humor, practical loyalty, the small, persistent acts of maintaining one's own humanity in circumstances that were not interested in it. They were not heroes in the way the Forum would understand heroes. They were not celebrated or mourned or remembered in the official record. They were, in the administrative vocabulary of the Roman Empire, a taxable category. But they were people, fully, completely, unmistakably people, with their Greek names and their dried figs and their small drawings on walls and their dreams of houses with fig trees and doors that bolt from the inside, with their cats and their lamps and their carefully maintained Pascha and their long Thursday afternoons, with Titus talking about textiles and his missing wife, with their specific and unrepeatable humanity, which no ledger could record and no volcano could entirely extinguish. And that, if you are looking for it, is more than enough. So here you are now. You have spent a long night in Pompeii, in the lamp-lit corridors of the Lupanar, and you have met Lydia in her small stone room with her Greek handwriting and her nearly saved in a fund for a garden and a fig tree. You have met Marta, whose stubbornness is going to serve her much better than she currently gives it credit for. You have met Faustus with his ledger and his complicated accounting of worth. You have met old Titus with his dried figs and his empty house and his careful habit of not saying the things out loud that would be too heavy to say out loud in a room this small. You have met Sulla, who is exactly as much of a problem as advertised, and who is, nonetheless, going to wake up tomorrow and argue with someone else's flat rate, which is its own kind of persistence. And you have met Sulfur, who has not once in this entire narrative acknowledged your existence, and who is, in this specific respect, the most honest character in it. The people of the Lupanar were tougher than you, and I will ever be asked to be. They navigated a world that excluded them from its official protections while depending on them for a service it refused to publicly acknowledge. They did this daily, with wit and practicality, and the kind of bone-level resilience that develops only in people who have had no other available options and have decided, with or without ceremony, to find a way through anyway. They found humor. They found loyalty. They found each other. They wrote on the walls. They persisted, and the walls persisted with them, and the mountain came, and the ash came, and everything was covered. And when it was uncovered again, 1,500 years later, the walls were still speaking, still saying, "We were here, and we were human, and we would like you to know it." And now, tonight, you are lying in your bed, your real bed, your 21st century bed, with its unreasonable softness and its fitted sheet tucked in at the corners, because you live in a world of refrigerators and antibiotics and labor rights and mattresses that were not built into the wall in the 1st century and have not been there since the reign of Domitian. You have a door that locks from the inside. You have a bathroom with hot running water. You have a phone that can tell you the nearest restaurant, the weather tomorrow, the name of anyone you're trying to remember. Your lamp has electricity and a dimmer switch and does not smell of anything at all. You are warm. You are safe. You are, in the scale of human history, extraordinarily, improbably, breathtakingly comfortable. Lydia would have found your bedroom almost incomprehensibly luxurious. She would have understood the idea of a garden because she's been planning one. She would have approved of the bolt on the door. She has been thinking about that bolt for 9 years. She might have had opinions about the cat, if you have one, though she would probably have reserved judgment until she'd seen whether it respected other people's correspondence. She would have eaten the food from your refrigerator with the specific gratitude of someone who has been eating Pascha-soaked bread her entire adult life and has been quietly waiting, without complaint, for circumstances to improve. They did improve, eventually, not fast enough, not by any means that Lydia herself would have benefited from directly. But the long, slow, unfinished work of extending dignity and protection and legal standing to people who had been denied it, that work is part of what separates your bed right now from the stone platform in the small room in the Lupanar in Pompeii in 78 AD. The comfort you are lying in was not inevitable. It was argued for and fought for and slowly, imperfectly built over a very long time by people who had every reason to stop insisting and kept insisting anyway. Think about that as you close your eyes. Think about Lydia's small drawing on the wall, the one beside the bed, at sitting height, the figure that might be a person or might be a bird. Think about Vibius Restitutus and his Urbana. Think about Titus going home with his empty cloth bag. Think about Sulfur, wherever he is right now, which is wherever he wants to be, because that has always been the deal, and no one has ever managed to change it. The city of Pompeii is quiet now. The lamp has gone out. The mountain is dark against a darker sky. And somewhere, in a small stone room, 2,000 years ago, and under 6 meters of ash, a woman with Greek handwriting is almost asleep, thinking of a garden, thinking of a door, thinking of tomorrow. Close your eyes. The room is warm. The fan is running. The sheets are clean, and the mattress is softer than anything Lydia ever had. And she would have thought that remarkable, and she would have been right. Let the city recede. Let the graffiti fade. Let the lamp smoke clear. You've been somewhere very old tonight, and very human. You can rest now. Sleep well.